Long ago, in a village cradled by green hills and dancing rivers, there lived a man named Okonkwo. He was young, strong, and so handsome that people often turned their heads when he passed. But it wasn't just his looks. Okonkwo had something more: kindness in his eyes and gold in his hands. Everything he touched turned into success. His farm yielded more crops than others. His cows were fat and healthy. His compound was large, clean, and full of laughter. And by his side was Nneka, his wife. A woman with beauty so quiet and deep, it made loud beauty look foolish. But more than that, she had a soft voice that healed anger, and a smile that made even the sun jealous. Together, they had one child, a daughter named Nneka, which means, Mother is Supreme. And oh, Nneka was a light in their world. Her eyes sparkled like river water at sunrise. She ran through the compound with bare feet and laughter, her curly hair bouncing with every step. People in the village would whisper, "She is her mother's image." And they weren't wrong. She had Nneka's warmth and Okonkwo's strength. She was growing into a girl that turned heads, not just for her beauty, but for the calm in her spirit. But not everyone smiled at their happiness. Behind the soft greetings and kind nods, there were eyes that watched with envy. Women in the village, especially those who once dreamed of marrying Okonkwo, would sit together in corners and talk. She just sits there in her silk wrappers while her husband builds a palace for her, they would hiss. Let's see how long that charm lasts. The gods are watching. But Okonkwo and Nneka didn't hear them. Or maybe they did, but they didn't care. They were wrapped in their own little world, full of evening fires, sweet songs, and Nneka's gentle giggles. Then one morning, everything changed. Nneka woke up with a strange ache in her bones. She smiled through it, as mothers do, and said, "It's nothing, my love. Maybe the weather is just playing tricks." But by evening, she couldn't stand. Her body burned with fever, and her voice was only a whisper. Okonkwo called the best herbalist, offered goats and gold, prayed to the gods, and sat beside her bed every night. Nneka, confused and scared, held her mother's hand and cried silently. But nothing worked. And just like a candle blown out by a strong wind, Nneka was gone. The village went quiet. Okonkwo didn't speak for days. His eyes, once full of pride and warmth, looked empty. He walked like a ghost in his own home. And Nneka, sweet, innocent Nneka, stopped laughing. She would sit under the big mango tree where her mother used to sing, waiting for a voice that would never come again. People came with words. They came with pots of soup and calabashes of palm wine. But no words could touch the storm inside that house. Time passed, slowly and painfully. Nneka grew older, but her eyes carried sadness no child should know. Still, she never became bitter. She helped her father, swept the compound, and still offered smiles to those who were kind. But as Nneka grew, so did the voices around Okonkwo. A man should not live alone, his uncle said. The girl needs a mother, his sister insisted. You're still young. You need someone to warm your nights and manage your house. Okonkwo resisted. He would look at Nneka's old chair and whisper, "No one can replace you." But the pressure never stopped. Finally, one dry season morning, he gave in. Her name was Adis. She was tall, elegant, and came from a respected family. She had a sharp tongue and sharper eyes, but she smiled sweetly in public. Okonkwo's family approved. The village women whispered again, but this time the tune had changed. She's beautiful too. Maybe even more than the first one. She'll keep Okonkwo in line. The wedding was grand but quiet. Okonkwo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nneka stood in the corner, holding a small basket of flowers, unsure of where she belonged. At first, Adis was calm. She pretended to care for Nneka, gave her small gifts, and praised her in public. But something was bubbling underneath. She watched how Okonkwo still stared at Kaameka's old necklace. How he still sat by the mango tree every evening. How Nneka's face looked more like her late mother every day. And then, Addis gave birth to a baby girl named Amara. For a while, there was peace. The cries of a new baby filled the house, and Okonkwo tried to make everything feel balanced. But Addis could see the difference. Nneka received softer glances. Okonkwo would bring her roasted yams and carved wooden dolls. He listened to her ideas and took her with him to the village market. Amara was loved too, but not like that. Addis' heart grew heavy with bitterness. She started correcting Nneka harshly. "Why are you walking like that? Speak properly." She would give her the hardest chores and snatch little things from her hands with a sneer. Okonkwo noticed, but Addis always had sweet excuses. "I'm just teaching her manners," she would say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Years passed. The wind still danced through the village trees, and the seasons came and went like footsteps in the sand. In Okonkwo's house, life continued, but things were no longer the same. Nneka, once a cheerful little girl, had grown into a graceful young woman. Her beauty, like her late mother's, was quiet and pure, glowing without needing attention. Her skin shimmered like golden dusk, and her eyes still held that sparkle of joy that made people stop and look twice. She spoke with kindness, walked with grace, and helped anyone who called her name. Her father, Okonkwo, loved her more than words could express. He often said, "She is her mother's spirit in another body." He spoiled her with soft cloth, delicate beads, and even gave her her own hut beside the garden, where she could read, draw, and dream. But this love was watched closely, too closely. Addis, the second wife, noticed everything. She saw how Okonkwo smiled differently when Nneka entered the room. How he bought her finer wrappers than even his wife wore. How he listened when Nneka spoke, but sometimes ignored Addis' own voice. And even though Addis had a daughter of her own, Amara, now 10 years old, her heart grew heavier every day with bitterness. Amara was a bright child, but Addis never let her forget one thing: "You are the true daughter of this house," she would whisper. "Don't let that other girl steal what belongs to you." At first, Addis tried to be patient. She thought, maybe with time, Nneka would fade into the background. Maybe her beauty would lose its shine, and Okonkwo would finally focus on their side of the family. But Nneka only grew more radiant. People still stopped her on the road just to greet her. Young men sent gifts through their parents, begging to marry her. The elders praised her character. Even the market women smiled when she passed. Inside, Addis' jealousy boiled like a pot left too long on the fire. Then, one rainy season, Okonkwo fell ill. It started as a cough, then fever. He stopped attending meetings with the elders. His laughter disappeared. He lay in his bed, his strong body growing weak, his voice becoming a whisper. Nneka sat beside him every day, wiping his brow with damp cloth, feeding him broth, praying softly. Amara would come sometimes too, out of duty. But Addis stayed at the door, watching. In the nights, as the rain beat against the roof like 1,000 drums, Addis began to visit a woman from the edge of the village. People called her Mama Ife. Some said she was a healer. Others whispered darker things. They said she dealt with charms and secrets better left untouched. "Help me," Addis said, her voice trembling. "I want my daughter to shine, not be hidden in the shadow of another." Mama Ife's eyes gleamed in the candlelight. "What do you want?" she asked. Addis hesitated. "I want Nneka to lose her beauty. Let her fade. Let her be forgotten." Mama Ife nodded slowly. "It can be done. But beauty taken by force often returns in other ways." Addis did not care. She wanted her peace. Back at home, Okonkwo grew worse. One morning, before the rooster crowed, he breathed his last breath. Nneka cried out in pain, holding his hand as if refusing to let go. The whole village mourned. Even the birds seemed to fly slower that day. After the burial, life changed sharply for Nneka. Without her father's protection, Adis took control. She moved into the main house, took the keys to the storeroom, and called the shots. At first, she pretended to be kind. "You are still part of this family," she would say with a tight smile. "You may stay here." But within weeks, her true nature showed. Nneka's clothes were taken. Her hut was locked. She was made to sleep in the kitchen hut, on a mat by the fire. Her beads were removed. Her favorite books thrown away. Each morning, she was woken before sunrise to fetch water, sweep the compound, and cook for everyone, especially Amora, who now wore the finest cloth and jewelry once meant for Nneka. When villagers asked, "Where is Nneka?" Adis would reply with a fake sigh, or, "She has changed. She refuses to help. She's become wild and lazy since her father died." Whispers started. The people who once adored Nneka now turned away. Not because they believed the lies, but because they were afraid of Adis' sharp tongue and rising power. Nneka endured it all in silence. Her heart ached, but she remembered her mother's voice from long ago, "Your strength is not in your face, but in your spirit." So she waited, endured, and never fought back. Then, the spell began to work. One morning, Nneka looked into a bowl of water and gasped. Her skin was dull. Her eyes had lost their shine. Her long, curly hair had begun to fall out in clumps. Day by day, her beauty faded like the morning mist. Adis laughed quietly to herself. "Now let's see who they love," she whispered. But Amora, young as she was, began to notice. She remembered how kind Nneka had been to her when they were younger. How she had shared mangoes with her, helped her braid her hair, and taught her how to count cowrie shells. Watching her suffer made Amora uneasy. "Mother," she said one day, "why is Nneka always in the kitchen? Why does she not eat with us?" "She is not like us," Adi snapped. "She is a shadow. You must not pity her." But the seed of doubt had been planted in Amora's heart. One night, Nneka sat by the dying fire, her thin fingers holding a torn wrapper around her shoulders. She whispered a prayer, not for revenge, but for peace. She said, "If I am meant to be forgotten, so be it. But let truth shine one day, even in the smallest way." And somewhere far off, the wind carried her prayer. The moon that night was full, casting silver light across the compound. A strange silence fell. Adi stirred in her sleep, uneasy. In her dreams, she saw Okonkwo standing at the edge of the compound, holding a staff, his eyes filled with sadness. He said nothing. He only looked at her. She woke with a scream. Outside, Nneka opened her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt something shift in the air. The spell was not forever. Her strength was not gone, it was only waiting. And deep inside her heart, a quiet fire began to burn. Morning came slowly, like a reluctant child. But something felt different. The birds outside Okonkwo's compound sang louder than usual, their songs piercing the thick silence that had wrapped around the household like a spell. The sky was clear, bright, and full of promise. Nneka, still lying beside the cold fire, opened her eyes and sat up. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel weak. Her back straightened, and her chest rose with a breath full of courage. She looked into the broken mirror in the corner. Her face was still thin, her skin pale, but her eyes held a glow. A light she hadn't seen in months. And far off in the forest, Mama Ife woke up sweating. She'd had a dream. In it, a white dove flew from a fire and perched on the roof of Okonkwo's house, singing a tune of truth. Mama Ife sat still for a moment. "Something has shifted," she murmured. Meanwhile, Amora, Adi's daughter, sat outside in the sun, weaving a mat. She couldn't stop thinking about Nneka. The older girl had once been her role model, her gentle protector. Even now, after everything, Nneka still greeted her kindly and never raised her voice. That morning, Amara made a decision. She took a small bowl of yam porridge and tiptoed to the kitchen hut. "Nneka," she whispered. Nneka looked up, surprised. She hadn't heard her name spoken kindly in weeks. "I brought you food," Amara said shyly. I miss you." Nneka blinked away sudden tears. "Thank you, Amara," she said, voice soft as a breeze. As they sat together, eating and talking, the old warmth returned. Amara confessed everything, how her mother had lied to the villagers, how she'd seen her visiting the strange woman in the forest. Nneka listened quietly, her fingers resting on Amara's hand. "I forgive you," she said. "You are not your mother." Amara hugged her tightly. That moment became the spark. The next day, the village prepared for the new moon festival. Drums echoed through the air, and bright wrappers fluttered like butterflies in the wind. It was the biggest celebration of the year, where families danced, shared food, and young women showcased their beauty. Addis had been planning this day for months. It would be Amara's debut, the moment when she would be seen as the most beautiful girl in the village. She made her daughter wear layers of coral beads, perfumed her hair with palm oil and hibiscus, and smeared her skin with shea butter. "You will shine like the moon," she whispered. No one will speak of Nneka again. But Amara had her own plans. That evening, as the drums beat and villagers gathered in the village square, Amara slipped away from her mother's side and walked to the center of the gathering. She lifted her hand. "I have something to say," she called. The crowd turned. Addis froze. Amara stood tall. "I want you all to know the truth," she said. "My sister, Nneka, has been treated like a stranger in her own home. My mother made her a servant, told lies about her, and even used charms to steal her beauty." Gasps filled the air. Addis pushed through the crowd, furious. "Silence, Amara. You don't know what you're saying." But before she could reach her, an elder stepped forward, Papa Yuzo, Okonkwo's closest friend. He raised a hand. "Let the girl speak." Amara continued. "Nneka is the one who deserves to be honored today. She was always kind to me. She never fought back. Even when she had nothing, she gave. And I've seen the truth. My mother used a spell to make her fade away, but the spell is breaking." At that moment, from the back of the crowd, Nneka appeared. People turned and stared. She wasn't wearing fine wrappers or beads. Her gown was plain white, but clean. Her hair was wrapped in a simple scarf. Yet her face glowed with something deeper than beauty. It was the light of peace, of strength, of grace. She walked slowly to the center, head held high. The villagers murmured. Some covered their mouths. Others nodded slowly. They remembered now, the girl who used to help them carry baskets, who smiled at children, who sat beside the sick without being asked. "She has returned," someone whispered. Addis trembled with anger and fear. No, she cannot come back." But her words were drowned out. Papa Yuzo stepped forward again. "Nneka, daughter of Okonkwo, your spirit is stronger than any charm. We were blind, but now we see." He turned to the other elders. They nodded. From this day, Papa Yuzo announced, Nneka will be restored to her rightful place. She will take over her father's lands and home. "And Addis," he said firmly, turning to the woman, "your wickedness will be judged. You must leave this village before the next moon rises." Addis' face turned pale. She grabbed Amara's arm. "Come. Let's go." But Amara pulled away. "No, Mama. I choose truth." The crowd erupted in song. Drums beat again, but now, they were beating for Nneka. The young girls circled her, singing her name. Mothers danced. Fathers nodded in approval. For the first time in a long time, Nneka smiled freely. She looked up at the sky, and it felt like her father was watching. Later that night, as the stars blinked above and the fire crackled in the center of the square, Nneka sat beside Amora. "You saved me," she said. Amora shook her head. "No, you saved me first. A long time ago." They laughed. And behind them, the village danced on. The spell was broken. And Nneka's light, no longer hidden, shone brighter than ever.